The question on everyone's lips right now is what will happen if the Supreme Court fails to disqualify Tinubu or fail to cancel the election. Will there be a military coup in response to that? Or will the people troop out en masse in the streets of many cities in Nigeria to protest the legalization of forgery? Well, let's start with military interventions. Since the 80s, all the military interventions we've had were based on their selfish interest, not national interest. The military men are politicians in uniform. The politicians enable them when they are in power, while the military men support the politicians when they are in power. None of them are loyal to the Nigerian constitution. They are just two sides of the same coin. Take for instance when Abacha seized power from Shoneko in the 90s, Abacha quickly consulted with MKO Abiola, the presumed winner of 1993 presidential election. He promised him that he will spend a few months in power and hand over power to him. MKO, believing that Abacha will hand over power to him, gave his followers the free hand to join Abacha and serve as ministers, the likes of Kingibe, Jack Conde, and many others. The most important thing here is that the politicians were not against the military rule because they felt that Abacha will hand over power to Abiola. Yes, to many of the politicians at the time, they were only thinking of what they could get from the system, not upholding the Nigerian constitution, not upholding what is right. So it has always been about their selfish interest, about being a minister, about earning a salary, about being in control, not upholding the national interest. That was why they allowed Abacha. Abacha employed many of them. They only started turning against Abacha when they found out that he had no plan whatsoever to hand power to anybody, not to talk of MKO Abiola. Even at that, many politicians continued working with Abacha. They continued encouraging the military even after knowing that Abacha wanted to become a civilian president. Remember when the 5 political parties adopted Abacha as their sole presidential candidate? So the politicians all along have always enabled the military. They've tolerated them. They only turn around to criticize the military when they are not gaining anything. Look at today, all the people that claim to have fought the military in the 90s, where are they today? Why are they not talking? They always enable each other, despite the fact that Nigerians are suffering more today compared to Abacha years. Yes, under Abacha, we had a better economy than we can ever dream to have today. But all these people that call themselves democratic rights activists and human rights activists, they are nowhere to be found. They can't criticize the government. They cannot say anything despite the difficulties Nigerians face today, worse than under military rule. So the military will never save Nigerians because going back in history, they've always made things worse. Under the military, they don't pretend to be what they are not. Just like what we have today, the politicians no longer pretend. They appoint criminals to positions. Yes, look at what happened in Kanu. They appointed people who were once declared wanted by the police as police constables. Is it the military? They openly negotiate with insurgents. This one happened in Katsina State. They openly negotiated with them. You can see them moving around with many equipment. They even call their men on the road to allow them to pass. So what is going on in the country? You can see that the military are only after their interest. They are the same as the politicians. Let's even assume that there are a group of military men who are not happy with what is going on in the country or the direction the country is heading. But the problem is they can't do anything because they don't control anything. The people that control many things in the military are in bed with the politicians. So for that to happen, they will need to first of all fight within the military themselves before they can now get the required support. In summary, military intervention will never be a viable option for Nigerians. Let nobody encourage it because they always make things worse. In the absence of military intervention, what next? What will happen? What option do Nigerians have? Well, the next option is for people to show their grievances, show the powers that be that they do not like the direction the country is heading, that they are tired of suffering. Will that happen? It doesn't look likely because Nigerians don't believe in Nigeria anymore. They simply think it's not worth fighting for. This is the first reason why people are not on the streets. They feel their effort will never count, that they will never achieve anything. They are also afraid of being maimed by the police or army that they will send to quell the protests. So all these culminate in why people are not happy with the situation. They seem spellbound. They can't even protest or talk about it in public. They are afraid. Their main preoccupation seems to be how they will get their next meal. Nigerians who can afford to travel to other countries are emigrating en masse with their families. So who will save Nigeria if everyone is not interested in saving Nigeria? The truth is, many people still continue to see ways to keep going. When they reach a point when there will be no way to go again and continue existing, then something might give. And that time might come sooner than we think because of the consequences of the Supreme Court upholding the judgment of the appeal court wholesale. Yes, it will nearly destroy our society because laws will no longer apply. Politicians will act with utmost impunity going forward. What will happen in Nigeria going forward can only be imagined. Now, let's talk about what will happen if the Supreme Court upholds the law. Despite the loss of confidence in the Supreme Court and the judiciary, we will still keep hoping that they will do the right thing until they prove us wrong. As you already know, there are many grounds to disqualify Tinubu. There is the certificate forgery case. There is the forfeiture of $460,000 being narcotics proceeds to the US government. There is the invalid nomination. There is the dual nationality he didn't declare while filing his particulars with INEC, which is perjury. He lied under oath. So if the Supreme Court disqualifies him on any of the grounds, that means he's out of the way, including Shetima, because it's a two-man race. After disqualifying Tinubu, will the Supreme Court go ahead and declare Atiku Abubakar the winner because he came second? Well, it depends. If they go as far as disqualifying Tinubu, that means they must spend time to look at other issues that the petitioners raised in their petition, because Tinubu did not win the election in the first place. We are not even talking about 25% in Abuja, which he did not score. And if the Supreme Court reaches this far and determines that 25% is required, then Atiku will not qualify to be declared winner because he did not score 25% of the total votes cast in the FCT. Which leads us to the third person, Peter Obi. According to INEC, he came third, so Atiku scored more votes than him. Before someone that came third or had less votes than a second person will be declared winner, it means they will need to prove that Peter Obi scored more votes than Atiku, which will lead to their looking at the evidence, all the polling unit results they submitted. The Supreme Court justices will need to go through them to determine the person that scored the highest votes. In the process of doing this, they might determine that the evidence is not enough, that INEC did not comply with the existing laws, the electoral law, the Nigerian constitution, in the conduct of the presidential election, which might ultimately lead to the cancellation of the presidential election because the non-compliance by INEC with the electoral laws substantially affected the outcome of the presidential election. If they reach this conclusion, that means all the other parties except the APC will prepare to contest in a fresh presidential election. Now, who will conduct the new presidential election? Is it Mahmoud Yakubu? Definitely not. The 17 political parties will approach the court to order his sack because he can no longer be trusted to conduct a free and fair election. They might also approach whoever is in charge because immediately the Supreme Court disqualifies Tinubu, he will leave office, the Senate president will become the acting president, the political parties might approach him to sack the INEC chairman and appoint a neutral person who will oversee the conduct of the new presidential election. Yes, that's how it goes. We hope that all these will answer your questions. We see a lot of people asking many questions in the comment section. This is how it's supposed to happen if they do the right thing or they refuse to do the right thing. Thanks for watching.